Hello, welcome to the March 28th, 2023 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'll be the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can either submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de or simply ask your question in the live chat field. Let me just mute something on my end here. Sorry about that. Give me just a second. All right, so so you could either send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de or simply enter your questions in the chat field. When asking questions, realize that I will probably be delayed in my response, especially towards the beginning of the live stream. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if we could refrain from repeating the same question over and over again, that will just kind of slow down the process. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, so if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, which version number, so if it's 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and which operating system you're running, that information will be helpful. And you could also ask questions about other Steinberg products. And realize that, again, we should have all the topics that are covered in today's live stream should be pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream ends with timestamps, so you could refer to that. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered, and I think we're over 25,000 topics, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to give Jan from Stockholm a special thanks for that. Also, we have two people that serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do it to make it a better community. So special thanks to Agent K and to Jazz Dude. We also, a wonderful resource of information we should point out that Jazz Dude does a lot of work on is the Cubase Nation Discord. So check that out. Wonderful tutorials and information that's available to users. Today is the last live stream of the month. I'll be on vacation starting on Friday all through next week. So we'll be doing our Zoom meetup. So I posted the link a little earlier in the chat field. So please feel free to join us on the Zoom link. Also, when I come back from vacation, I will be doing the NAMM show. So we may do, because I'm going to be flying on the Tuesday. So I was thinking of maybe doing the live stream on the Monday of April 10th. So let me know if that works for you so we could get a live stream in that week during the NAMM show time frame. So just a quick heads up. So we may do it instead of Tuesday, we may move it to Monday. So let me know if that's a problem or if you wanted to just wait. But I just wanted to run that by. So with that, we will go ahead. And again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host of the live stream. I'm presenting from the United States in just outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. So if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And again, with the Zoom meetup, if you haven't done it before, it's a wonderful way to kind of meet some of the other people that are on the live streams. So look forward to seeing new faces there. I'll try to post periodically, maybe every 30 minutes or so, the link again. And so with that, we will go ahead and get started. So a question. Hi, Greg. How can I show up only freezed tracks? Okay. I don't know of a specific way of doing this other than manually doing it. Let's just check the Project Logical Editor. To see if that is an attribute. So let's say we want to maybe do, we'll just see if we can do audio first here, and we'll see if under properties, I don't think that we will have if object is frozen. So, and let me just see if we do based on container type, I think we'll get the same options. Yeah, so there isn't a way to automatically select via like a Project Logical Editor, which would probably be the best bet for selecting tracks that are frozen. So I'm afraid that it's going to have to be done manually for that. So there isn't an automated process for that. Sorry about that. All right, so I have a question. Hi, Greg and all Cubasers. How to make group audio, MIDI, or sampler tracks? Greetings from Croatia. So if you click on the plus sign here, you could choose that you wanted to add group, sampler, or MIDI tracks. You could also just, if you're in the track list, right click, go to add track, and then you could choose the different types of tracks. If you have a number of tracks that you wanted to assign to a group track or to an effects track, you could select the tracks, right click, go to add track, and we could say group channel to selected channels. Or if we wanted to add an effect send to all of the selected channels, we could just come directly here, say let's add an effects channel track. So I wanted to add a delay. So now we could have our delay that shows up as our send on all of our different tracks, just like that. So you could click on the plus sign. You could also go to project to add track, or from the track list area, right click, and then you could see all of your different track types that you could add directly there. All right, so we see a question from Parabot 2. Hi, Greg. I put Techno Stab 06C on a track and it plays great, but on one bar, the echo and send effect that are on the bar are missing. It's just dry just on this bar. Have tried deleting and replacing, etc. So let's say if I think I may have copied this to my project already. So now we come here. All right, so let's say I have a delay, and let me just come here and let's see if we could put on, so we have a delay and a reverb. All right, so if I copy this a couple of times, so say I'll just make a copy of this. Let's see if we have our delay and reverb. I'll just take it out of loop mode. So if it's not playing on one time, maybe I would check just to see if you see the actual effects, if when you're looking at the sends for the particular channel, that maybe they weren't automated. So let's say if I come and automate this particular channel, so let's say maybe I had automation on and I added it like in between. So if it's something like that, so see if there's automation on the particular effect sends maybe. I know sometimes people will be writing automation and then maybe add the effect send after it's played the first time. So maybe there's automation on it. So if you could check that, that would be helpful. Okay, so we have a question from Johnny Lizard. Hi, Greg. Can you explain a little bit what it is and how to use the tempo detection panel? Okay, so when we have audio that we don't know what the tempo of it is, we can come over. So let's just find something here. I think so let's say we, like on this track, we don't know what the tempo is. It was recorded without a click track, and we wanted to be able to determine the tempo. So let's say we go to the beginning. All right, let me just... All right, let's do different project here. Let me just. Let me see if I have this project open. I'll just create a new project here. I'll just put a quick 2-track in. All right, so say we're just listening to this file. My project doesn't want to play. All right, so what we could do with the tempo detection is we could just select the particular file and go to the tempo detection. So we'll go to project to tempo detection. And at this point, we'll just choose to analyze. And where we have a file that maybe wasn't at a steady tempo, we can now come over here and have it do our tempo detection. We'll see some different functions. Like it may catch it like if there is offbeats where we could do a particular tempo changing, and we could also say maybe it detected at half speed or double speed. We can multiply by 2, divide by 2, etc. So we could just come directly over here and have those different functions, but it's intended to create a tempo map from MIDI or audio without necessarily having to have if it was recorded with varying tempo. So you could just take a track and have it do its tempo analysis right there. All right. And we have Peter checking in from Montreal, Canada. All right. So we see Simon. Okay. I'm glad that you got it sorted out with your upgrade, so your cross grade. So yeah, today is the last day of the Steinberg promotion. So if you get a chance to, if you're thinking about jumping up or have a friend, it's 40% off. I believe it ends today, so take advantage of that. All right, so we have a question from Filter Freak. What is the quickest way to populate every channel with sends and activate them in the mixer? Okay, so let's say if I have a project here. Okay, so let's say we'll add 16 audio tracks. Okay, so if I select all of my tracks here, I'm just going to hold down Shift, and we can select. My keyboard is acting weird today. Let me just. Sorry, my keyboard is acting really strange. Let me see if I need to charge my keyboard. Hang on, my shift key isn't working. All right, my shift key is acting. Let me see if I could get another computer keyboard. Hang on one second. All right, I have a new keyboard out. Let me see if it's going to power on. Hate when my computer keyboard doesn't work. Bear with me just for a moment. Sorry about this. All right, my keyboard isn't pairing, so let me try. See if I get. All right, let me see if I get my new keyboard paired. Sorry about this. I have a little 2.4 gigahertz. Let me see if I get this to pair. Sorry about this. All right, I'm just going to restart my Cubase. Sorry about this. Let's see if it's. All right, my computer is. I'm just going to restart my computer. Bear with me while we restart. I'll have to restart the live stream, so I'll just hang out just for a minute or so. All right, so I think it might be coming back online here. Let me just check audio, and audio looks okay. And I'm going to just monitor the stream here. Bear with me just for a second. I'm just going to monitor this. All right, so I apologize for that. Let's just jump back to our Cubase. See if my keyboard is working. All right. Okay, so our question about how to quickly add multiple effect sends to different tracks. I apologize for that. Don't know what my computer was doing. All right. Okay, so to populate every channel with sends and activate them. So if let's say I add a number of audio tracks. All right, and if we just go to sends here, so an easy way of doing it is just to hold down the shift key, and then we can say, okay, let's add an effects channel to the selected track. So I'm going to add, let's say, a stereo delay. Now this will be added to all of the tracks as inserts. So we could do it just like that. So once the tracks are selected, at this point, all you have to do is say, just sorry about that. My computer's doing wonders today. All right, so once we have all of the tracks selected here, just select again, right click, and we will choose to come right over here, add effects channels to selected. So let's say we wanted this to be a reverb, and at this point we'll see our effect sends here. So as we add or reference reverb, they'll automatically be populated. So just right click. All right, sorry about all the technical problems today. All right, so next question. All right. All right, we see Val Lu on. Okay, so we see just a question, what are the session parameters for today's live stream? And then my chat field just jumped on me, so let me... Okay, so we have from Dan Campieri. What are the session parameters for today's session? So it's really just any questions that you have on Steinberg products, so we answer them. So Michael Pierce says, evening all, hope everyone is safe and well. So what's the take on the Waves news? So I guess that would be a good topic for our Zoom meetup today. So, but yeah, it'd be interesting. Doesn't seem like it's very positive, but maybe some people are happy. All right, so a question from Val Yu. When I drag a chord into a MIDI track, it's always longer than it should be, and perhaps a lot. The X is not taken as shorter, even though I have the preferences set to that. Okay, so let me go ahead and go to a different session here, and we'll just open this up. Okay, so it's drag a chord into the MIDI track. It's always longer than it should be in overlaps if the X is not taken as a shortener. All right. Okay, and now my keyboard is acting up again. seeing if it's a MIDI remote that's causing it. Okay. All right. So we'll try to move on. Hang on just one second. I'm trying to reconnect the USB device. Okay, so let's see if we could put in some chords here. Okay, so I'm going to drag this down to the Rhodes part. All right, so it says when you drag a chord into the MIDI track, it's always longer than it should be. It overlaps a lot. The X is not taken as a shortener, even though I have the preferences set to that. So it looks like when we look at the length of that, it's going to be until where the X comes in. So let me just check the preferences on chords. So that's how I have my preferences set without that on. So let me know if that is behaving differently than what your system is doing. All right. So we see from value, I'm just going to check to make sure everything is coming through okay. It says, if you make the EQ and the channel strip behave like frequency, I will marry Cubase. All right, so there's a lot of people that like the existing channel EQ. It's been a request, I know, but there's a lot of people that don't want to necessarily have all of their projects that use the channel EQ be different than, to be a different EQ than what they originally did their project. So we have to think of kind of project compatibility backwards as well. So. All right, so we have John Barry checking in from Devon in the UK. Matt Elston checking in. We have Eric Sampson from Paris. Jazz Dude says Monday is fine for him. All right. We have King Drew 562 checking in from Los Angeles. All right, and Peter saying Monday. So we'll plan on Monday, April 10th, so we get a live stream in that weekend. All right, Eric Sampson asks, if I upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11, will I keep my Cubase, all presets, parameters, and all plugins? So it shouldn't matter, but you could go to the, if you could always just come over here and back up a profile. So if you go to your edit menu to profile manager, you could back up a profile, but generally it's going to be seen in, like upgrading the operating system shouldn't affect those particular folders for you. All right, wonderful to see John Costigan on. All right, we have Uno Memento from Finland, Robbie Bowling from Dallas. All right, wonderful to see Jill Connor on. Great to see you on, Jill. All right, Michael Pierce wants people to hit the like button. We have Ziggy Edison on as well. All right, so we have a question. Greg, if I select multiple notes in the MIDI editor, then is it possible to align the start of all these notes to the same position automatically? Okay, so let's say if we're in the MIDI editor and I have multiple notes, So let's say I have all these notes selected. My cursor is here. I think if we go to move event starts to cursor, that'll do it kind of move one of the selected events, but let me just see. So I think it's going to keep the proportionality there. So let's see if we go to move. Let's see if maybe we could do it in a logical editor. Okay, so let's say if we just do this, they're all selected. So if you go in the logical editor, choose transform, type is equal to note, and under action target, we'll choose position, move to cursor. So now if we undid that, so we'll just come over here. Let's undo the logical editor function. So as soon as we have this done, all we had to do is again just run this logical editor. So type is equal to node, position move to cursor, and then all the beginning of the notes will move to the cursor. Okay, so we see Nick popped on to hit the like button. All right. All right, so we have a question from Couscous. Hello, is it possible for the chord track to play the chords an octave higher than usual? Okay, so let's say if I have this, and I'm just going to check my connections here real quick. Okay, so what you would have to do is just to come over here and let's go to setup voicings, and then you could choose your lowest root note and lowest note here of the chords. So once you just kind of come directly over to this particular, go to the chord track itself, and then go to setup voicing, and then you could just simply adjust directly there. So let me know if that helps. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. My Midi port setup driver isn't detected in my Cubase 12. I've seen it in the Midi device manager on the output side that there should be a PA 600 sound an option, but it doesn't appear. Thanks. So if you see in the Midi port setup, so let's go over here to our studio setup and we will see Midi port setup. So if it shows like deactive, it could mean that it's just not being used. If you don't see it listed there, then it's probably not available. The driver is not available in the operating system to use. So, but let's say I'll just look at it and let's go to the Midi device manager. So it says on the output side, there should be a PA 600 sound in option. So generally sound in isn't where the you're not going to see in the MIDI device manager where the MIDI device manager just defines the output. So you may not see an input, and if it's a sound in, maybe it's just an audio interface that doesn't have MIDI on it. So you see Soren just says, hi Greg, my friend is doing a cross-grade purchase of Cubase Pro now, and the shop says verification takes 2 days. Will he get the sale price? I believe so, as long as the process was started before the 28th, but I'm not absolutely sure. But I'm pretty sure that it will, as long as it was kind of initiated. All right, so we see what is the main difference between Halian SE and Halian? So Halian Sonic SE comes with Cubase, and it has less instruments. But when we go to like Halian, and the current version is Halian 7. Halian 7 is going to have a tremendous amount of additional instruments. Plus, it's going to come with like instruments such as FM Lab. So if you wanted to, you're going to have a lot more different instruments that come with this. Plus, you have 64 channels, and you have the ability to sample directly in and create your own instruments. So we could think of Halian Sonic SE as a playback engine. Halian is kind of a instrument creation, sound design, sampling tool that combines sampling with FM synthesis, virtual analog synthesis, wavetable, and granular synthesis, all into one unified package. So if you wanted to create your own instruments, you could do that, and you could use Halian Sonic SE or Halian Sonic to play back as a player for content created in Halian 7. All right, my chat field jumped on me. All right, so I think I'm close to where I was. Sorry about all the issues having today. All right, so Patrick asked, Greg, how to select all first notes in the pick I sent you. As you know, selecting second and third is fine, but is it possible to select only the first notes? I mean, all F1 notes, which falls on beat 2 of the song. Okay, so let's say we have particular notes that are falling on, that we want to select F1 that falls on beat 2. So let's go ahead and just kind of create. So we'll just say, let's get to F1. And let me just make sure we have this set to the correct beat. So only the F1 first notes, which falls on beat 2. So let's say we have this set up, and as we work with this, so we have F1 notes that start on beat 2, and I'll just kind of just draw in other notes. And we'll draw in another F1 note. So let's go to our logical editor and say we want to select, and we'll say notes that are, and we'll say value 1 is pitch. So we're going to say is equal to F1. And we want to say that fall on beat 2. So we're going to choose position, and we're going to say inside bar range. And at this point, we'll just say around beat 2. So if we look at our example here, I'll hit apply. So at that point, it only selected F1 notes roughly falling around beat 2, and all other notes were ignored. So again, we want to choose select, type is equal to note, pitch is equal to F1, and we could just choose roughly. And this is like we see 16 divisions of a bar. So this is beat 2. We could get more precise, but sometimes it may be a little bit ahead. And then all you'd have to do is just hit apply. So that will select F1s on beat 2. So let me know if that helps, Patrick. All right, we have Tiago checking in from Brazil. Ziggy Edison says, well, you can be sure that this is a live show. Yeah. Just when you feel good about everything's working okay, then you have problems. All right, I'm just posting a link to the Zoom meetup. All right, so we have Brandon Wilson just asked, from Louisiana, I would like to know, what is the purpose of the wave circle meter? So let me just go ahead and let's see if this is going to play. I have some MIDI device that's just wigging out my computer. Let me just see if it's my Nectar controller. Hang on just a second. Let me see if I can get this disconnected. It's kind of buried in my desk. All right, so the wave circle meter, so I know some people that will use it. I'll just try different projects, see if it's going to play back. Okay, so the wave circle meter, I just don't know what's causing my MIDI activity to, I think it turned everything off. It was connected MIDI-wise, all right, but it's just not cooperating today. So when we go to our wave circle meter, we go to, let's say, our master, and then we'll open up our inserts. So now that we will see kind of our waveform, so we'll just kind of see a wave circle. So sometimes people like to use this to know exactly like how, like to determine in live performance. So what this would do is just play back and you'd see the waveform go around in a circle. So if you were tracking, you could know exactly how long it takes to get to the beat, but it's just kind of a different representation of time. So I think that there's maybe some DJ software that uses that as a meter. So hence the purpose of it kind of going around in a circular, like clock-like fashion. All right, so let's go on. Tim Weinheimer is asking if I installed a new Wave subscription. So no, I don't have it on my computer. So. Okay, so Patrick asked, Greg, on a control room, what's the difference between monitors and main insert plugin? what difference it makes. So it's possible to put plugins on both, but how to use properly. So if you wanted everything to go through a particular plugin scenario, like regardless of what monitors were being used, you could use the main area for the inserts. If we are going to the point where like we have different speakers, so let's come over here to our monitors. We could also have monitor inserts, so that as we would switch between different monitors, that we could apply different inserts. So if I wanted to switch to a different monitor scenario here, like let's say, okay, I have Yamaha NS10s and I wanted to apply a bit of EQ to add more low end or whatever, we could now just come over here and apply EQ to just one set of speakers as opposed to globally through every set of speakers. So if we wanted to apply processing, whether it's a limiter on a particular set of speakers that maybe aren't powered, so that you could just, have a limiter so that you don't have to shut off the power amp, or if you wanted every single speaker monitoring path to go through inserts, you'd use the main. But if you wanted to just apply processing on one set of speakers versus the other through plugins, that's when you could use the inserts on particular monitors. All right, wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. All right. All right, so we see while playing chords using the chord track, is there a way to make it keep playing while removing my hands off the keys? So I think if you just send, let me see if we could just see if we get a new project. Going here, let's add an instrument track. Okay, so let's say if we have this, my whole computer is just acting totally bizarre today, but let me just. Just gonna check my connections one more time. All right, so let's say I am playing a chord track. And I have this set to monitor. So now when I come over, so I think if you wanted that to keep sounding, that you might be able to just use. So, I'm just going to reread the question. While playing chords using the chord track, is there a way to make it keep playing while removing my hands off the keys? So I think, and I don't have my controller hooked up because I think it might be problematic and maybe causing issues. But I think if you would just hold like a sustain pedal down and you removed your hands, that it would continue to sound. All right, so we see second question. Can I trigger an arranger track event by pressing 3 MIDI notes together? So you could do it with one MIDI note. So if you wanted to trigger different arranger tracks, you could go to, let's see if we could do it in the MIDI remote. I'm going to try to connect one controller here and see if it wigs out my system. All right, so my nano control wasn't liking that. All right. So, but if you go to, let's say, your studio menu to studio setup, and let's say if we have a generic remote setup, and then you could say, okay, I want this one particular MIDI note message. So you could just do kind of a quick learn message. And as we do that, we could say, let's go to command, and then let's go to arranger track. And then you could go through 20 different arranger track events that you could set up. So this way you could hit one key on your MIDI keyboard, and that could trigger the arranger tracks for you. So once again, go to the generic remote, and I think you could do it from the studio setup, from the MIDI remote as well. So, and go under command. Once you have the MIDI note, so it's not going to do 3 notes at once, but just one single note to arranger, and then you could trigger the different arranger chains in your particular song. All right, so we see from Braxel says, question, I still cannot find out how to get the mix console up where it shows the meters up top like a console strip. Okay, so I will just play back, load up a different project here, see if we get it to play. Okay, so once we have this set up, we go to our mix console and we hit F3. Let's go over here to the setup, and then we could see meter bridge at the top. So now as we come right over here, we could just say meter bridge, and then you may have to extend the meter bridge down. So just let me know if so. Just again, come over here to the mix console setup and choose meter bridge right there. All right. So let me know if that helps, Braxel. All right, so we have a question from King Drew 562. Can you use the sampler track to chop samples? So let's go over to just our loops and panels. We'll just drop a quick drum loop in. So we'll create a sampler track. So all you need to do, once the sampler track is created, you can click on slice and then turn that on. And then we could adjust the slices by transient. And then you could, at that point, each of these would go chromatically. You could play them from your computer keyboard so that all of these could be triggered. So yeah, you could slice, but once you're in playback, just click on slice and make sure that the slice is turned on. And then you could slice it based on a grid, transient plus grid, or manual by holding down the Alter Option key. All right. So we have a question. Let's say I have a MIDI event with 50 notes. Is there a way to export each MIDI note to wave? So I have 50 wave files for each note separately. Okay, so all right, so let me just go back to different project. Okay, so I'll just add an instrument track. So I don't know if they're. So let's say if we have something like this. So if your notes are all kind of separated, like maybe you're doing kind of a sampling session, you could probably make a macro to. So it's not going to do it one by one. Let me just see if. All right, maybe I'll do this. So let's say I have this going to, I'll just add an instrument track here. Okay, so let's say if we have this going, so let's see if we could split at every single note. So let's come over here. I'm going to put it in the in-place editor. Okay, so let's see if we could, so I'm just looking for a way to, so if we have these all, let me just see if we could split by event. Now even keys on my new keyboard aren't working. Okay. So let's see if we come over here and all right, so let's see if we do this in the if we could automate this process. So let's say so you could probably make a macro to just split at each of the events. And let me just take off. So let's say if they were all split like this, if my actual keyboard was working better today, I would. So let's say if we have a macro, again, where each of the notes is split, then if we wanted to render those in place, I could select all of the events and go to, let's go to edit and then to render in place, and we could choose our render settings and we could set these as separate events. So now we could just come over here and have the actual individual events kind of fired up, and we could have each of those kind of broken down separately like that. Okay. All right, great to see Brian Sawyer says, I have many or MIDI audio events and I selected them. Is there a way to see how many events I've selected? So let's see if, I don't think that there is a count for how many events are currently selected. So if we have a number of audio events here, so I don't know that there is a particular count for that. But if it's on a particular track, let's see if we go to our project browser. Let's see if it shows the number of events. So there's not a counter per se, but that I can see, or so we could select all the events, but I don't know of a way to count them. But if there's a particular reason you need to count them, let me know and I can pass it along. All right. All right. So we see from Patrick asks, selecting a bunch of notes on bar while duplicating, is there a way to automatically set to original placement where it's duplicating? So if it is kind of like a MIDI event, so let's say and let me just grab. All right, so let's say if we have notes that are like in the middle, but often as we do this, let's say if I choose to duplicate these notes, it'll duplicate the note selection here. So let me just come over here and so it doesn't maintain its time position. But if we go to the in place editor, which you can get from Command or Control plus Shift plus I, that you could now use the range tool. So I could select the range of a measure and then I could duplicate that, and that will keep the space before and after. Whereas in the MIDI editor, we're just selecting the events. On the project window in the in-place editor, we could use the range tool to select the arrange so that we can say we want this measure to be duplicated, and then we can have the space before and after events automatically preserved for you. So let me know if that's what you wanted, Michael, or Patrick, sorry. All right, so we see Tim Weinheimer says, thanks again, Greg, for everything, and tell the guys at Steinberg for not making Steinberg subscription base. Thank you. All right. I think they've done their research, and that's what they've determined. All right, so we'll miss David on Zoom from Liverpool. All right, so see, as a continue to previous question, can I trigger a chord track using 3 notes instead of 1? You could, like, if you have the chord pads, you could, capture the particular MIDI message here. So you say, okay, like I'm directly here, and we could, play the chord and capture that. But, the chord, so, can I trigger a chord track using 3 notes instead of 1? So if it's the chord track, as you trigger it, it's going to play the particular chord. So let's say if we have this monitored and I add a chord track. So it's not actually being triggered by 1 note unless you're going to the chord pads. But then you could trigger these from one note if you wanted to. So as we would click here, that would be the note that triggers the chord pad. So, but let me know if you're trying to trigger the chord directly from here, or if it's the chord pad that you're trying to trigger. All right, so you see Filter Freak just says he just wants to say that after his last encounter with Steinberg support, 12.052 is now the most stable version of Cubase he's ever used, period. So that's great. See, Ziggy Edison says if we ever get together, there has to be an ice cream bar. So, and soups from Michael Pierce. All right. So Braxel says he's anti-subscription. Drazy Eternal asks who's memorized the Cubase index Q&A yet. So, all right, we have Bruce Bruton checking in from Simi Valley, California. All right, so we see John Koskins also fine for Monday, April 10th. All right, so Secret Studios on. So is today the live stream day? So yes, it is. We'll be starting in about 45 minutes. I'm going to post the link one more time. So, and I'll try to do that in about 30 minutes. All right, so we have Gerald Ely checking in from Martinez, California. All right, we have Mark Winslow checking in, saying aloha from Hawaii. So I'm going to be there on Friday. Be a long day to get there. Looking forward to it. All right, and we have Wilhelm Kampmann checking in from Germany. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see a question from Rob. Could you show how to import a vocal track that was created from unmixed stems and spectral layers from a different project? Can you apply Vari Audio to the imported track on a new project? So let's give it a try. So let's come over. Okay, so let's come over here and we'll show you the trick to this. Let's unmix stems. So I'm just going we'll get to layer and let's choose to unmix stems. All right, I'm just going to do the vocals here. So what this is doing is basically taking the vocals out of the particular file. And what it's going to do is basically just create a new layer. So it's doing its magic. I often kind of liken this to taking the eggs out of a cake after you've made it. All right, we'll just give this a minute here. Okay, I'm almost done here. Okay, so once it does this unmixing, it's going to just show up with a particular layer here. So we could just say, okay, I want to take the vocals and we'll drag it to the timeline. So now that our vocals is in the timeline, I could come directly over here. If we choose to, let's double click here. So what I think I would do now is we could make it permanent. And if I wanted to be able to jump back, I'll just say, let's get to audio, to bounce selection. We'll replace events. And now when we double click, we could go into Very Audio, do its analysis of it. And as we just jump over here, we could now do all of our tuning on the Very Audio just right from there. So yeah, you can't do it. All right, so just see a comment. It could be my IAC driver that's causing all sorts of problems. So let's get my Midi port set up and make sure. So IAC is turned off and still kind of wigging out. Let me just get to my generic remote and disconnect. All the IACs from here. All right, so let's move on. All right, so we see Rinky Donk just had a comment. And my chat field jumped on me. I think he just bought Cubase with crossgrade because of owning Logic. Used Cubase decades ago, and Logic can't come close to all the intricate audio editing, so that's great. All right. Okay, Steve Leeds. Hey, Greg, in my opinion, everything you do on screen helps, even if it's not advanced for me to understand. I absorb what you say. It goes through operational files in my mind. Thanks. So, glad. Just wish my system was working a little better today. All right, so we have Spencer B checking in from Atlanta. So I see just comment from Got Yours says, wonder if they will skip 13 and go to 14 since 13 is known for being unlucky, like all the phone guys did and some hotels too. So I don't think that our version number will be affected by the number 13. So. All right, so Braxel just says, I'm still on Cubase 12 trial, but bought the program on sale. Should I just wait until the trial ends, then use my code? So you can, so it's no problem either way. Okay, we have from Jose Saliva, says, can you demonstrate how to convert a vocal sample to MIDI and convert those notes to a one-note rhythm pattern? All right, so let's say if we have a vocal file here, so we'll just go to loops. All right, and I'm just going to take this particular MIDI file. So say we'll have a couple of vocal files. So we'll come over to our Very Audio. So let's just say we'll. So once we have done our vocal tuning here, we could just come over, and at this point we'll go to under functions in Very Audio, You'll see functions, and then we could just say, let's extract MIDI. And now we could see the MIDI pattern directly here. So as we have our MIDI pattern, you're able just to do that. And if you wanted those to be all single notes, all you'd have to do, I think if we select the notes here and hold down the command or control key, we can say I want all these to be D3 and hold down, I think it's control or command, and then we could fix all of the selected MIDI notes to one single pitch and maintain the rhythm. Gerald Ely says he loves the MIDI control, the arranger track tip. Okay, so Joe and Keys ask, Cubase Elements 12 just downloaded yesterday. I can't hear the playback. I'm receiving a message that says the VST system link has been deactivated because of too many receive errors. So generally, you're probably not going to be using VST system link. So if you go to your device setup, you could just come over here and make sure that that we have the VST system link is chosen as not connected. And what you want to do, Joel, is go to your audio system here and choose your audio interface directly here where it says ASIO driver. And then, so if you have like a UART, like I have a UART24C Steinberg interface, so I have that particular interface. And then once that is set up, you go to your audio connections and then go to outputs. And at that point, you could just say route this directly to your audio outputs of your interface, and then you should be all set. But you probably don't need to use VST system link. That's a way of synchronizing multiple computers together with a digital audio connection. But if you try that, Joel, that should do the trick. It's wonderful to have you on the live stream. All right, so we see from Michael Teams, howdy Greg, found out that you need to be careful about using free warp on the main window. You can move things you had no intention of moving. Arg. Please explain why this is dangerous to everybody. All right, so if we have a particular audio event, okay, so let's say we'll take this guitar part and we want to do warping on it. So the one thing that you could always just do is, let's say if we're doing free warp, so I'm going to go to my warp tool here and choose free warp. The one thing to be aware of is a lot of times when you're doing warping, it's easy to just say, okay, like I want this event to be, over later in time. So we move the warp marker, but we can move everything. So what you often need to do is just to use kind of like different anchors. So maybe if you just kind of put anchors before and after, then when you move the event, the information before or after has been automatically kind of accommodated for, and that will keep that particular event in time. Now, if you have a number of markers here, and if you see that we could take the hit points. So as Cubase records, it's going to take all of the hit points, and we will come. And one of the things you could do is you go to audio, we could go to real-time processing, and we could just say create warp markers from hit points. So at that point, that could automatically populate all the warp markers so that you can make just one particular change. Now, let's say if we go into our sample editor, and let's say if we're in free warp, so we'll go to our audio warp. And let's say if you've accidentally moved stuff, so let's say, okay, I'm here, I have my free warp tool, and I've moved like a bunch of files. So I think if we just go directly here, you could say reset, and that will take you back to square one. So if you've made a bunch of like, oh, I totally messed this up, just double click on a file, and from the sample editor, go to audio warp, and then you could reset, and then that will take you back to square one. So. All right, so we see from Patrick, 2 bars long, 30-second length notes on MIDI logical editor, type equals note value, F1, context variable on every count. If I set 2 and 3, selecting the second and third notes, but if I set it as 0 or 1, selecting how to select the first notes. All right, so let's say if we have, I'll just create a quick MIDI track here. Okay, so let's say I start here. We have one long note, and let's say I will cut it. Into 30-second notes. All right, so let's say if I come here, let's set my grid. Okay, so I'm just going to hold down Alter Option and split. So now we have, let's say, a series of 30-second notes. So I only want the very first 30-second note of every bar. That's F1. Or let's just come here. I'll just make this to F1. Okay, so again, we'll go to our MIDI logical editor. And let's go to our setup. And we want to take notes that are F1. And instead of using the count, what you want to do is, so we're going to say inside bar range. And I'm just going to put just a very, so if we come here, we're going to have 120 pulses per quarter, per 16th note. So I want to put this value as 60. So I'll just, so now when I do this, it'll select only the very first 30-second note of the bar. So this way, instead of doing it by counts, we're just going to do every first or every third note of a particular note. Here we choose the position based on the measure. So give that a try, Patrick. All right, wonderful to see Brianna checking in from Youngstown. Great to see you on. See, Strict9 says, wow, for you to be able to answer all these questions and know how to navigate this while in the program is amazing. You must be an engineer, right? I'm just a dumb bass player, so. I'm not a rocket scientist, but my dad was, so. All right, so we have a question. Greg, what's the quickest way to copy MIDI from one track in the same project to another track? All right, so let's say we have okay, so as we look at this, we're going to have MIDI information here on this particular track. So if you just drag it and hold down the Alt or Option key, we could just drag it to a different track. Now, if we wanted to restrict it so if I just move it and then before releasing the left mouse button, hold down the Alt or Option key. But let's say I don't want it to move in time, like I want it to be perfect time. Since I moved it downward or upward first, I could then hit the Control or Command key, and then I could just make a copy just that easily. All right, wonderful to see Matthias Quellman on. He's our celebrity guest. Hopefully Matthias will make an appearance on the actual live stream. So he has to tune in one day. My computer is acting badly. So Matthias is the man. All right. All right, so Sable Winters will be on the live streams, breaking a new webcam. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher on. All right. All right, so we see, can you insert a compressor on an effects channel like a reverb? So you can, but it may not give you kind of the same effect. But what a lot of people will do if you have a number of tracks that are creating issues, we could come over here, and if we hold down the Shift key, but whatever tracks that you have, you could select multiple tracks, and my computer is still acting weird, but just right click and then you could add those to a group channel. So usually what people will do on particular tracks is send them to a group channel and then run the compressor on the group channel. So we can say, okay, I want to take a group channel to the selected tracks, and then on that group channel, and this is common with like drums and background vocals, you could then just go to the compressor, or you could do it even in the channel strip and have compression just on the particular group channel. You could do it as a send, but it may not give you the same impact, or it's maybe not the right gain structure that you would expect for that. All right, wonderful to see Madge Deepers on. Great to see you on the live stream. Glad you could join us today. Value says bass players rule the world. All right. Let's get to some of the questions that were mailed in before we move over. So I'm going to go ahead and post the Zoom meetup again. So let's come over, and looking forward to seeing many new faces on Zoom and many familiar faces. Hopefully Matthias can join us. That'd be wonderful. All right, so let's come over to my questions. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to assign a suspend all channel linking button in the mixer for a key command? I couldn't find it in the key commands. If not, is there another way to temporarily suspend channel linking? For example, I have a bunch of linked channels, and I have the plugins linked, but then I want to quickly tweak a plugin parameter on just one of the linked channels, not affecting the others. It would be great if I could do this with the key command. However, if there's a way you could ask for it as a feature request. All right, so let's come to just a new project, see if we get my computer to cooperate here. Okay, so I'm going to add number of audio tracks. Okay, so really all you have to do is once your channels are linked, let me just is to unlink. So if we do have channels, let me see if I have a project where I know where they might be linked, but you have a, so let's say the channels are linked. But to override a particular link, so let's say, but to override the link, just hold down the Control or Command key. My my computer is just not allowing me to select. I've disconnected every MIDI device into it. But if we just kind of hold down the Control or Command key, that will temporarily override the link of linked elements together. Okay, so we have a question. Is it possible to recall a mixer snapshot with either a key command or a button of a MIDI remote device? Thank you in advance for answering this question. So I think that the only key command that is available to access for that is going to be to save the keyboard shortcut. So let's say if we go to key commands here, so I think that once you go to snapshot, so we could save the the mix console snapshots. We could invoke that with a key command. And I think that once we have like mix console snapshots, so let's say if we have a number of different choices here, that we take a snapshot, that often, if we have different functions set up, so let's say we do this and we take a snapshot, and the snapshot can include all of the plugins, that it's not necessarily intended to be like an automation snapshot. So if we just come over here, let's take another picture of this. So I know that, some consoles would allow you to kind of switch back and forth between snapshots for verses and chorus, but depending on the number of plugins that are being utilized, it may not be like a real-time function depending on as the plugins take time to load. But I'll make sure to include that as a feature request and into my notes as well. So, but currently there isn't a way to do it that I know of. Okay, so we have a question. It's kind of a clarification from last Friday's. What I actually meant to articulate was specifically to cycle markers while in the key editor, not the actual MIDI data. Of course, I'm familiar with that part. It says I move quickly back and forth between different MIDI tracks, and thus there are varying quantize settings and zoom levels for those parts. I find it hard to update the cycle points with the accuracy using the mouse. Is there a setting I'm missing that deals with this? I, of course, know about the J and the various snap types. All right, so let's say I think this was how to kind of on a particular MIDI track. Or I'll just do a quick instrument track here. How to set like the left and right locators. So let's say if we're here and I have different notes. All right, so if we want to set the locators around different note groups, I think if we just select the notes and then hit the letter P, that you could do that and you could freely move these. But if you have like a specific note range, like, okay, this was a bad performance, I want to replace those notes, just select the notes and hit the letter P, and that will automatically set the left and right locators around those particular events, just like that. But once that's done, even that we have snap on and off, you could just come over and freely adjust and that's not snapping to anywhere. So let's say if I just enable snap, so snap is enabled and these are freely placed. We can, but that's another method to set the left and right locators just around specific events. And we think P like parts to locator, and that also works on the main project window. So if you have just a range selection here, you could just hit the letter P again, and that will set it up for you. All right, so we had a question, this is from a couple weeks ago, about how to split audio into slices and copy multiple slices as separate audio files to a single pad on Groove Agent. Okay, so let me just come over. I'm going to load up an instance of Groove Agent, and I think that this was like taking like maybe different kicks or snares or, based on different volume levels. And the person was kind enough to send an example. All right, let me see if I get the full Groove Agent in. Okay, and this will work the same way on Groove Agent SE, but let me just come over to, we'll find a quick. All right, that looks like that would work. All right, so let's say we have an audio file and we have chosen to kind of split the particular audio files here into different segments. So I'm going to just double click. We go to the sample editor and let's go to hit points. And we'll see under hit points, let's go to our slices. And then at this point, we'll say, I'm going to create events based on the slices. So now we look at this, we have all of these different events. So what the person was wanting to do is take like a sliced audio and say, okay, I want to take this file and this, and this, and drag it onto a Groove Agent pad. And when we do this, because it's still a part of the original file, it's going to automatically split each of these to different pads and not onto the same pad. So what we need to do, if we wanted to all go as layers on the same pad, is just to, and what the person was doing a bounce selection to each of these events. But a faster way of doing this, especially if you have multiple bars of something like this, is just to go to edit, to render in place, and we'll go to our render settings, and we want to choose render as separate events. So now what this is going to do is create new audio files for each of those, and we can see which have already been selected. So these are now separate, distinct audio files, not a region of a bigger audio file. And now at this point, I could drag these and they could all go onto the one same pad. So, instead of having to take each of these, do a bounce selection, choose to replace, select another one, bounce selection, replace, and then drag it, just go to the project, just go to your edit menu to render in place and then to render settings. And at that point, that will create the new audio files. It'll keep it in the same exact time. And then if you wanted to do it for other sections, you can say, okay, I want this, and this is all of my snares or my kicks, whatever. You could just repeat this process again. So we'll just use the same ones. And now we could just drag all these to another pad and have all the different samples stacked like that. So that's a quick way of creating new, separate, distinct, smaller audio files from a larger context of the drum loop. Okay, let's go back to our live questions. Jump back here. Thanks for all the great questions. And we'll be starting our Zoom in about 10 minutes or so. Okay. All right, so we see the Heartbreak Time Machine says he gets so much out of the sessions. It's great. All right, wonderful to see Daniela Tocan on. Hope you're well. Gerald Ely says, isn't that the way it goes? Your colleague shows up to check out what you do, and then your tech goes all wacky. So, yeah, it's one of those days, but all right. All right, so we see Nick has made it back in time for Zoom. That's great. All right, so we see question. Hello, Greg. I created a macro that zooms in so that 8 tracks are visible and only 3 bars. The zoom is a bit random, and I have to click on an event. Is there a better way to make that macro work? So let's say, okay, so let's see if I could recreate it here. So I'm not sure if you're doing it via macro or if it's on every single project or just particular projects. So let me just come and say we want to see, I'll just try to recreate it. So 8 tracks are visible. All right, so let's come here. All right, and let's say 3 bars. Okay, so come. All right, so let's say if we go to our edit menu to Zoom. All right, so let's just take a quick look at the macros here under edit key commands. Okay, one thing that you might be able to do is something called a quick a ZEM, or is, just get the correct term, a mem zap, I think it's called. So let's see if we come over here to key commands. Let's look under Zoom. Zoom zap. All right. So let's come over here and assign key command to that. All right, so let's say if I like that particular setting, and now if I come over here and fire that off, I think you have to kind of capture the zoom settings. So let me just see if it's with the mem zap. I think I have it set up with my controller, but that's not working so well today. All right, so let me... All right, so zoom mem. So let me just set that. All right, so there's a zoom mem and a zoom zap. So now that, let's say we have this set for 3 bars, 8 tracks. And now I could go back to that zoom. So you could kind of take the zoom mem and the zoom zap. So let's say, again, I will just come here. And once we have that stored, we could just immediately go right back to that zoom state. So again, I'll just have everything zoomed really well here. So again, and you can set this up with the keyboard shortcuts. So go to your key commands under zoom and do a zoom mem. So you'll see the zoom mem. So that's like taking the zoom stat and then recalling it with the zoom zap setting. So now I could just come right over here and that will always kind of be that same particular zoom level. So give that a try. All right. Drazi Eternal says, has anyone ever seen Greg? It's like Dr. Claw because I never see him. So if you join his Zoom meetup, you could see me there. So I like the concept of, the mystery voice of a radio DJ. But I think we're going to be adding some cameras so that we could do this. All right. See how we're doing on time. So we got about 5 minutes before I'm going to post the link again for the Zoom meetup. Hopefully I'll have less technical problems with the Zoom meetup. All right, so we see Daniela Tocan says it seems that Mary Plummer, the trainer of DaVinci Resolve, did more than a brief look at Cubase. That's interesting. All right. All right, so we see from Richard H. Hey, Greg, can you bring in external instruments from a keyboard into 12? I only get the piano sound from my Yamaha PS500. Thanks for all you do. Yeah. So, if you're dealing with external instruments, all you have to do is one of the methods is if you have an audio input that you could take the audio input and go to your audio connections if you have Cubase Pro, and you'll see external instruments. So you can say, okay, I want to connect the inputs from, I'm going to take the audio outputs of my keyboard and send it to inputs directly on my system here. And we could load it as an external instrument. So if you have available inputs and outputs, you could do that. And then as we add an instrument track, we could just choose for that instrument track to be external. So let's just come over here real quick, activate this project. Let's go to activate instrument tracks. External, and this way once we go to an external instrument, we have the option of just saying, okay, let's get to our external instrument, and I want it to be my Tyros, and at that point we could bring it in to work with it with different effects. If you are just hearing the keyboard, so Cubase will send the MIDI data out, so it will capture the MIDI data from the Yamaha keyboard and transmit it, but you need to have a MIDI track. And then once you see a MIDI track at this point, you'll have program changes and bank selection. So try just sending different program changes directly from there. And then you should be able to, that should change the sound on that particular MIDI channel. It should respond to program and bank messages directly there. And then you should be able to hear something besides the piano. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to start the Zoom meetup. So let's transition over to Zoom. So let's take a look. So I'll go ahead and start the meeting. I'm going to post the meeting credentials, and we'll make sure that it's going to be the right credentials here. So I'm going to go ahead and start our meeting. And we'll join with computer audio. All right, we'll see. All right, so we see Brian Sawyer. We have more people kind of migrate over. All right, we have Jan. All right, we have Benny. We have Bert. All right, I'll just keep the live stream open for a couple more minutes. Hey, Jan, good to see you. Let's see if other people will be joining in. Give it a couple minutes. All right, we have Tim Weinheimer, and we have Peter. And we have Karsten. All right, we'll just give the live stream here a couple more minutes. Seems like everyone was able to get in okay today. I didn't post a wrong link with all my computer problems today, so that probably helps. All right, we see Gerald Ely. All right, we have Nick. All right, John Barry. David Glick. Wonderful to see you. Robbie Bowling. Great to have Robbie on. All right, I'm going to let the meeting go on for another couple minutes. We'll see if other people will join us. All right, we have Jay. Just entered. All right, we have Daniela joining. Michael Teens. All right, end the live portion of the meeting here. All right, so we see Charles. I just saw. Hi, Greg. Do we still have time for a little question? So if you want to join the Zoom, I could probably answer the question for you over there. If not, yeah, if it's a real quick question, we could do that. All right, you see Mark Winslow. Zoom is updating. Drazi Eternal just ask anyone can join. So yes. All right, so we have Ziggy Edison. All right, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and end the live portion. Okay, so the live portion's ended. All right.